Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is Open Mic. Now, what is Open Mic, you may be asking? Well, I am awfully glad that you asked. See, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday. In the second half of the show, we take all Open Mic live questions from you guys. But here on the weekends, on Saturday in particular, all we do is take your live questions, and that's what we're going to do here today. And guys, I hope you've all had a marvelous beginning to your weekends. May it be filled with relaxation and enjoyment. I hope you guys are having a good time. Again, stay safe, stay smart, take care of yourselves, take care of the people around you, and we'll all be doing pretty damn good. I know I myself am very excited for the UFC fights tonight. Got a good Canadian kid fighting the greatest female fighter of all time in Amanda Nunes. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. That good Canadian kid, girl, she tough. I'll be so impressed if she makes it to the end of round 2 with Amanda Nunes. I don't think it's a good style. I mean, listen, I believe there are female fighters out there who do have particular styles that will match very well with Amanda Nunes, particularly Valentina. They fought before real tight, real close, but I don't think this is a good style matchup. And I think I'm going to watch my Canadian girl get her ass kicked tonight, but I'm going to be cheering her on anyway. Anyway, I hope you guys have some good plans for tonight anyway. Listen, guys, without wasting any more time, let's dive right into it and start taking your live questions. And we're going to get things started off here with Jesus is King, who writes, bro, if Harley Quinn gets another sequel before Superman, don't let me find the address of the WB execs in charge, LOL. You better be right about the J.J. Abrams thing. Well, yeah, so all I can tell you is what I've been told. You know, what I've been told is that J.J. Abrams is indeed doing a Superman movie for Warner Brothers. From there, I heard two different things. Like, both sources that I talked to both say, oh yeah, JJ's doing a Superman movie. But after that, they differ, because one said that he's looking at maybe Henry Cavill being that Superman, but Warner Brothers wants him to have his options open. The other one tells me that no, it's already been decided Henry Cavill is going to be Superman again in a J.J. Abrams. So all I can tell you is what I've been told. I'm hoping, you guys know, I mean, there's Henry right there. There's Henry right there. I am hoping it ends up being true, but yeah, man, we'll find out. We'll find out soon enough. All right, Mr. TJ Lynn writes, let's see. Movie about civil rights. Black Klansman. Oh my God. A funny, poignant, powerful, one of Spike Lee's best. Listen, I tell you what, so what TJ is talking about is yesterday's show. We talked about, you know, what would be some really good movies to watch right now, given the environment that we're living in. And I said, from my perspective as a Canadian, pasty white Italian kid, talking about U.S. American race relations movies, which I'm not the best guy to give an opinion on that, but I gave a list of a couple of movies that really meant a lot to me. Black Klansman's incredible. It was my second favorite movie of that year. My favorite movie that year was still A Quiet Place. My second favorite movie was Black Klansman. My third favorite movie was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I loved Black Klansman. It might have replaced Do the Right Thing as my favorite Spike Lee movie, but I absolutely love that one. It's a great one to call out, TJ. All right, Alex Detman writes, oh, it says in like a $50 tip. Alex writes, hey, John, wanted to let you know our last remaining COVID. Oh, I mean, you work in the hospital. That's right. Wanted to let you know that our last remaining COVID positive friends just left today and are COVID free. Just a heads up. Ada thinks you are I don't know what that, muy guapo. So, is that an Italian slur? Because I'm a wop. Anyway, muy guapo. So Anne may have a run for her money. I remember the picture of Anna. So let me read Alex's next one. This is just to say thanks for all you do, making our days just a little bit better, my friend. You know, Alex wrote to me last week or a few weeks ago, and he works in a hospital in the Chicago area. And he wrote to me, you know, I constantly get emails from people that just almost make me cry. And these were ones that I particularly shared with Ann too, like because Alex works in these hospitals, and he said, you know, watching the John Campea Show around the unit where the COVID-19 patients were. And I remember the one picture of Ada, this older woman in the hospital there, and just seeing those pictures and knowing that our show was helping raise some people's spirits. I mean, seriously, I nearly broke down when I read that. I very seriously nearly broke down when I read that. So thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for being on the front lines the way you are. Thank you for supporting the channel. And thank you for doing what you do, dude. Seriously, thank you so much. And again, thanks for supporting the show, man. All right, next up. The Kryptonian Eternal writes, who exactly is this Wakandan Forever person anyway? We've got a lot of, if you spend time around the John Campea Show, a lot of very passionate fans who just like contributing to the conversation, like supporting the channel. It's great. Guy Fox JLT writes, hey John, longtime viewer. Thank you so much for that, Guy. I remember when Disney bought Fox, you said it will take time because AT&T Warner Brothers still didn't complete. So if Warner Brothers was on sale or for the right price, why didn't Disney buy it? I think there are a couple things. One, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Warner was worth a lot more. And I think it was more of a merger takeover. At any rate, I don't know why they bought one over the other. I think Fox was more affordable than Warner Media would have been at the time, I believe. Could be wrong about that, but I believe that's the case. But maybe they just felt that there were just too many other things. Look, the main reason that Disney bought Fox was contrary to our community's belief. It had nothing to do with X-Men and Fantastic Four. Like, there are still some film fans out there think, oh, they bought Fox so they can get X-Men and Fantastic Four. That had nothing to do with it. Or at least very little. That had a small part to do with it. It was really about acquiring all the IP rights and library content and territorial rights and all that kind of, not to mention the rights to Hulu and all that kind of stuff. It was Disney making a large branded IP play, particularly to support Disney Plus and what Hulu was going to be. Now, why one over the other? I'm not sure. I know Disney certainly couldn't have afforded both. I know they couldn't have done that. And probably Fox was the more affordable one, or Fox just had more territorial rights and things like that were more appealing. There's a million little details that go into that kind of stuff. I'm sure maybe AT&T beat them to the punch and were already in discussions with them by the time Disney thought they needed to acquire one more major IP play to really support their future plans. There's a million different little possibilities in there, so I'm not really sure. But here's the thing. A lot of people just think that Disney has unlimited money, and they don't. They spent nearly 50% of their entire net worth buying Fox, right? And it's funny because when I tell people, when you look at Apple or Amazon, Apple and Amazon can literally buy and sell Disney like 7 or 8 times over. Maybe it's 5 times over, whatever. It's a massive, massive number. So like a lot of people, understandably so, because they dominate the movie space so much, we have this impression that Disney is just made of unlimited money. They have unlimited resources, and they don't. And the purchase of Fox is a real testament to that. But again, it was important because it plays a big part of their future plans. Anyway, good question, Guy. All right, Willow writes, how far up on your watch list is Better Call Saul? I fell off from watching the series after season 3 and have just recently got caught up. I don't like it as much as Breaking Bad, but it's still very enjoyable. Looking forward to the season finale. Well, I hope soon, because I'm like you. I started watching Better Call Saul. I like Better Call Saul, but for whatever reason, I just kind of fell off from watching it after the season I was watching ended, whether that was season 2 or season 3, I can't remember. But I got caught up to a certain point, really enjoyed it, and then for whatever reason fell off. I'm not sure why. It's on my list. Next up on my list, though, besides, Lucifer coming out and whatever, next up on my list is, everybody's been telling me for years to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. So Avatar: The Last Airbender is next up on my list. I'm going to watch the original Avatar: The Last Airbender series. I've had so many of you telling me for so long I need to watch it. I've had Chris Carr telling me for so long I need to watch it. So this week, I'm going to start watching Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix. So that's next up on my list. All right, next up, Drew H. writes, I'm sorry, Nat, I can't sign it. I know. Well, then what are you doing here? I didn't want you to be alone. Isn't that Cap? And that's Cap and Black Widow in Civil War, right? I think it is. I didn't want you to be alone. This scene always gets me. Such a grounded, heartfelt scene between two friends in a world of heroes with superhuman abilities that feels. Listen, that is one of the intangibles. It's okay. So I was having a discussion not long ago about Marvel, the MCU. Somebody asking, what is it that makes Marvel's MCU so successful? I said, well, they get the bigger mythology of the characters. They do dynamic work with interconnecting the universe and blah, blah. But I said, a lot of other things can do that on a surface level. To me, it's the intangibles. It's the fact that these MCU Marvel movies don't lose sight. Kevin Feige doesn't lose sight of the fact that, yes, we are trying to make a great comic book movie, but we are also trying to make a great movie, right? And sometimes they succeed more than in other times, but you can tell when Kevin Feige is making these movies, they are trying to make a good comic book movie, yes, but they start with what would make this a good movie, period. And it's little intangibles like scenes like that remind us that it's about the characters, and it's about inner dynamics and relationships and connections and chemistry between characters, foundational things for a good movie, not just a good comic book movie. And it's little scenes like that, Drew, I'm glad you pointed that one out, that are really special. It brings it all home. So that when the giant action is happening, and later on when Natasha and Cap are fighting on two different sides, and then Natasha ultimately covers Cap's escape, and it has meaning because moments like this exist in the film first. And I think that's one of the key things to highlight, and I'm really glad you did that, Drew. Well done. All right, Ben Rayner writes, "Hey, John. Wow, I loved, you watched, I forgot, yesterday you mentioned you were going to watch Unforgiven for the first time. Wow, I loved Unforgiven. I've never seen Gene Hackman as a tough villain like that, other than Lex Luthor, and that Lex wasn't exactly tough to me. Clint and Morgan Freeman were excellent together. Clint did an incredible job directing that movie, 9.5 out of 10. Seriously, Unforgiven, I go back and forth sometime, but lately I've really been because I watched it again not too long ago. I've really been in the whole Unforgiven to me is the greatest Western of all time. I think Unforgiven is the greatest Western of all time. And watching again recently really, really drove that home for me. And really, and it stuck the landing. Like, it was a beautiful movie that did all those things. And on top of that, it really, really stuck the landing. So I thought it was tremendous and great. And yeah, Clint Eastwood was absolutely fantastic, both as a director, filmmaker, one Best Picture of the Year that year. Gene Hackman is incredible. If you want to see him play more of a tough guy too, try the French Connection movies 1 and 2, or watch Mississippi Burning. I mean, granted, he wasn't a tough villain, but if you want Gene Hackman, I mean, you think Gene Hackman is a frail old guy, right? Oh my God, if he wants to play a tough guy to you, you will crap your pants. I don't care if it's a 75-pound, frail looking little old guy. When he turns on the intensity, you will crap your pants. Crap your pants. That's what Gene Hackman can do. Anyway, yeah, that movie's brilliant, man. I love that one. I'm glad you had a chance to watch it, Ben. All right, Drew H. writes, I know it's part of the narrative, but what always bothered me in Infinity War was when Tony pinned down Thanos' arm and knocked him, drawing blood. Rather than continuing to strike Thanos, Tony just stands there giving Thanos time to recover and strike back. Well, there's a truism to that, though, right? There's a truism to that. Like, number one, Tony was pretty much spent. Tony had thrown everything he had at Thanos, right? And there's something demoralizing about that. I remember I was doing this jujitsu class. It was in the early days that I was doing this one jujitsu class. And I remember, and I was rolling with another guy in the class who had been there longer than me. And somehow, some way, I got a triangle on the guy. For those of you who don't know what a triangle is, you don't have to be on your back. Traditionally, you're on your back. You're able to loop one of your legs around the back of your opponent's head. And then what you do is you use your other leg to scissor up and use it as leverage to squeeze down on that. And it's called the triangle choke, right? It cuts off blood flow, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I locked, I'm this guy who was more advanced in the class than me. I locked my first triangle choke while rolling with somebody. And for a moment, I'm like, oh my God, I locked a triangle choke. And then I look up at the guy's face, and his face isn't even turning red. Like when you lock a good choke on somebody, I don't care if it's an arm triangle, I don't care if it's a traditional triangle, I don't care if it's whatever. When you lock a choke on somebody, the first thing you do, the face starts turning red, and if you get really locked in, turn purple, and then they got to, tap out or pass out. I looked at this guy, he was just smiling at me. I'm like, well, I'm clearly outclassed, and I was just demoralized. I was completely demoralized because here I was thinking, oh, I got this locked on. And then look at the guy. He's not turning around, he's just smiling at me. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm in trouble. And sure enough, he got out of it, and pretty soon I was the one that was tapping out. But it's demoralizing. Tony hits Thanos with everything he's got. He hits him with absolutely everything he's got. And all Thanos says is, all that for a drop of blood. I mean, you're complete. Like, and you know what? Robert Downey Jr. did a really good moment in that scene, because you remember when the scene goes back to his face, he's like, what the F do I do now? Like, so I don't know. I see what you're saying, but to me, there's something about that scene that felt very real to me. In my own inadequacy, something that felt very, very real to me. And I don't know. So that's just what it did for me, Drew. All right, Chris Hunt writes, Becky is probably the weirdest Home Alone sequel, but definitely better than Home Alone 3. Is that the one with King of Queens guy? Is that the movie with the Paul Blart Mall Cop? Why am I forgetting the actor's name? Anyway, is that that one? I can't remember. I think that's the one, because I think we were talking about that one the other day. I have not seen it. I have not seen that one. So yeah, there you go. All right, let's see here. Next up, an anonymous viewer writes, hey, John, your show has been essential viewing for sanity during my time of unemployment. Well, I'm glad the whole community's been able to be here for you on that, man. But I landed a great job and start work again mid-June. That's awesome, dude. That's something to celebrate. Just curious, but have you ever heard of an indie movie called The Man from Earth, directed by Richard Schenkman? Okay, I want to say yes. But let me just double check to see, where is it? IMDb. Let me just double check to see if it's the one I'm thinking of. This is not the one I'm thinking of, but I love this guy. This guy's a Star Trek. Veteran as well. John Billingsley is in it, and he's done a number of things on Star Trek. I'm not familiar with this. An impromptu goodbye party for Professor John Oldman becomes a mysterious interrogation after the retiring scholar reveals to his colleagues he has a longer and stranger past than they can imagine. Sounds pretty cool. Hold on, let me bring this up here. That sounds cool. But no, I am not familiar with this film. It's got a pretty decent viewer rating on IMDb. Not that viewer ratings on IMDb can be really trusted, but it's got a pretty interesting... That looks interesting, and I like this guy a lot. So I might have to check that out. Thank you for putting that on my radar, my friend. I just may have to check that one out. Okay, next up is... let's see here. Dan Ketchum writes, it doesn't matter what you look like, tall or short or fat or thin, ugly or handsome, like your father, you could be black or yellow or white. It doesn't matter. What does matter is the size of your heart and the strength of your character. Herman Munster. I'm reading this quote. I'm like, I don't recognize this. It's a good quote. Herman Munster. You know what? Sometimes, Dan, you find the greatest little diamonds in the weirdest pile of coal. Herman Munster. I'm not familiar with that, but that is a great quote. More applicable today than ever before. Thank you for sharing that, dude. Mr. TJ Lynn writes, what is the title of your documentary? Suggestion, Felipe the Sentient Dancing Microphone. It would be the tangibilization of the news we heard from 3 years ago. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I am working on a documentary right now. I currently don't have a title. I don't have a title right now. But I've had some ideas. All my ideas for a title have been bad. The subject matter of my documentary is looking at the history of, influence of, and the future of movie trailers. That's the subject matter of my documentary. And we've worked very hard on it. We've hit a stall. We've been stalled ever since the pandemic broke. So we've been in a bit of a stall. I was kind of hoping to have I'll be honest with you. I was hoping to have the first cut done by the end of May. I was hoping to have like a first rough cut done by the end of May, and then to have some kind of edit ready to go to play at Comic-Con in July. That was my original hope. And I knew that was ambitious. But yeah, the original hope was that by the end of May to have a rough cut put together, then to have some time to do a little bit of refining, a little bit of post-production, and then have a cut of it, not the final cut, but a cut of it ready to go by Comic-Con to play at a Comic-Con. Well, pandemic struck. There is no Comic-Con. So yeah, I'm not close I'm not I'm not nearly close to the point I wanted to be at right now because of the pandemic and we got stalled, but we're slowly starting to crank work back up again on it. So hopefully in the next like 2 months or so, we'll have some more updates for it. So thanks for asking about it though, TJ. All right. Eddie Burton writes, hey, John, it's my birthday. Happy birthday, Eddie. I hope you have a great one and that you have a fabulous year ahead of you, my friend. It's my birthday, so I was wondering if you could rank the De Niro-Pacino collaborations best to worst. Irishman, Heat, Godfather 2, and Righteous Kill. Personally, that be how I would list them best to worst. What about you? Well, I mean, to me, that's easy. To me, that's easy. Like normally I don't like to do rankings, but this one is perfectly easy. Righteous Kill is easily on the bottom. Righteous Kill is easily on the bottom. And it's the only one that's not really good. I mean, it's terrible, but it's the only one that's not really good. The rest of the three are really good. Next up in the number 3 spot, I would put Irishman. Then in the number 2 spot, I would put Heat. And then in the number 1 spot, Godfather 2, if for no other reason that there's a lot of, film maniacs out there who would make an argument that Godfather 2 is the greatest movie of all time. I'm not one of those, but it is one of the greatest movies ever made. Certainly one of the most influential. So yeah, for me, number 1 would be Godfather 2. Number 2 would be Heat. Number 3 would be Irishman. Number 4 would be the terrible Righteous Kill. All right. TJ Lynn writes, while many people found you in Avengers and Man of Steel review, I found you for the first time 14 years ago in the Departed review. I remember I was still living in Hamilton when I did that. For a while, I remember you as the Departed movie review guy. Do you think Alec Baldwin was snubbed for a supporting nomination? You know, it's weird because Mark Wahlberg did get a supporting actor nomination. If I'm not mistaken, and I might be, but I believe Mark Wahlberg got a nomination. You know what? Let me go and look this up now. Also, I've got to look this up here. The Departed. Man, that was back in the day when it was just me. My movie reviews were me sitting in a chair in my living room in Hamilton, Ontario. I still remember making that review. Okay, let's see here. So, of course, The Departed was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, winning 4 of them. It won for Best Picture of the Year. It won for Best Director, Best Screenplay, and Best Editing. And then it was nominated, yes, it was Mark Wahlberg was nominated for Best Supporting Actor in that, but he did not, he didn't win. Alec, I remember at the time thinking, I got no problem with Mark Wahlberg getting that nomination, but I remember thinking, Alec Baldwin could have got that nomination instead of Mark Wahlberg. I mean, I thought it was close. They were both brilliant. And I could understand they weren't both going to get it, even though you could do that. Technically, it was allowed by the rules. But yeah, I remember thinking, so I don't know. I wouldn't say this, though. I don't think he was snubbed, right? Snubbed is a word that we film fans use way too loosely. I don't think he was snubbed. I think you could make an argument that maybe he could have gotten a nomination because he was great in that, but I would not, TJ, I wouldn't say he was snubbed per se. But man, you've been with me a long time, dude. If you've been with me since the Departed days, that's awesome. Thank you for that, my friend. All right, next up. Roger Lee writes, I just don't get it. And John, appreciate you taking the high road, but you've got RB3, Jay Washington, and crew on the latest SEN video, piling on Rob even more, and singling you out, saying that you are problematic, and Rob working with you is problematic, just trash. Yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. However, let me make one thing very, 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 very clear. In that video in question, RB3 did not say anything of the sort, right? And by the way, I can tell you that Robert Meyer Burnett and RB3 have been working the back channels, working everything out. All right. I look, I don't want to give away a spoiler, but I can tell you both of these guys have been committed behind the scenes because they realized, us trying to play out our drama on a public forum like Twitter hasn't worked out so well for us. So they have been both working very, very hard behind the scenes to rectify their situation. On my show the other day, for those of you who watched the show yesterday, You guys know first of all, you know I've had Robert's back this whole time. I don't condone the original things he tweeted. I said they were dangerous and irresponsible, but nobody knows that better than he does. And he apologized for them, and there's that. But also the other day on my show, I said, listen, if we're all gonna cut Robert some slack, because yeah, he was in the heat of the moment, he was angry, he said some things that were uncharacteristic for him, and he shouldn't have said, and he knows that, blah, blah. If we're gonna cut Rob, this is what I said yesterday. I said, if we're gonna cut Rob that slack, you gotta cut RB3 some slack too. Because he was angry. He saw some stuff that understandably so made him hot and angry, and things spiraled out of control. And I've been saying that if you're going to cut Robert some slack, you got to cut RB3 some slack. Because listen, I don't know RB3 very well. Barely at all. I obviously know Robert very well. I don't know RB3 very well at all. But I can tell you that my limited experience with RB3 has been quite good. I think he's a good kid. I think RB3 is a good kid. From my limited experience with him and my limited exposure to him, I've always thought RB3 is a good kid. And I don't think anybody, either RB3 or Rob, should be labeled for maybe an ill-advised moment of carrying on something publicly on a public forum and blah, 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 whatever. I think everybody just needs to be cut some slack. However, yes, Jay Washington decided to double down on a lie he told 2 years ago and publicly apologized for, and then decided to get on an SEN show and double down and repeat the lie, and dragged me in a situation where they were discussing the issues going on with RB3 and Rob, and for some reason Jay Washington decided to say, look at me, everybody. And he decided to drag me into the situation. Repeat a lie that he had told a couple of years ago. And refer to me, particularly in a racial context, as being problematic. That guy Rob worked with, he's problematic. And then he doubled down again saying, Campea, like for instance, this guy's problematic. He said Black Panther was only being used to promote Infinity War. He's problematic. All right, for those of you who don't know what's going on, let's back up a little bit, shall we? Let's back up a little bit. Now, if a lot of you want to hear me, because we all love drama, if a lot of you want to hear me point both barrels at Jay Washington and unload on this dude, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm not going to do that right now, but I am going to give you context. All right. So, a couple years ago, before Black Panther came out, for those of you who are familiar with my show and regular viewers, you know I was really excited for that movie. I was a huge Chadwick Boseman fan. I was stoked when they announced him he was going to be Black Panther. And every day, day in, day out in my show, I was really excited about Black Panther. Not because it was Black Panther, but because it looked awesome and had tremendous talent. I mean, you had the director of Fruitvale Station, for heaven's sakes, coming. I was excited about it. As a matter of fact, hold on a second, because now I got to, hold on a second, let me bring this up. Just give me 1 second here. Almost. Give me a second. Okay, here we go. All right, just wait for it to load. All right. So I even put out a video that I titled Why Black Panther and Black Heroes Are Important by a Pasty White Dude. So I made this editorial video that was about 5 minutes long that basically, from my perspective as a Canadian and as a white dude, why I thought Black Panther was an important movie. It hadn't come out yet. But I put together this video about why I felt Black Panther was important to be made and why I think introducing black superheroes into the modern era of superhero films, why I felt it was important. You don't have to agree or disagree with me. That's fine. But I'm just setting the stage for you here about, what I was talking about when talking about Black Panther. I was very excited about it, all that kind of stuff. Now, and let me just bring up some tweets here. Now, while all that was going on, I did a video, and oftentimes, I title the videos based on the subject matter that people write in to ask about. Hold on, I'm just bringing these tweets up. Okay, 1 second. All right, so people would write in, and I would title, everybody knows this, I would take one of the topics somebody wrote in to ask about, and if I thought it was an interesting topic, we would make that topic that somebody wrote in about the title topic of that particular episode, right? So one person wrote in, and I heard a lot of people asking this question at the time. Somebody wrote in and asked me, because of where Black Panther was opening in close proximity to Infinity War, they were asking, hey, is Marvel just using this film as a marketing tool for Infinity War? A lot of people had been asking that. And so I thought, that's an interesting topic of conversation. Let's address that. So in the video then, that was titled, is Disney trying to use Black Panther as a marketing tool for Infinity War? And so once we got to that question in my video, I spent a number of minutes laying out why that was not the case. I said, hey, I think it's fair that you asked the question because of the proximity, but here's why I don't believe in any way, shape, or form why that is what Disney is doing here. I don't think that's what Disney's doing here because of A, B, C, D, and E. So it's a fair question to ask. It's an interesting question to ask, but I will reply to the question by saying, no, that's not what's happening because A, B, C, and D. It was completely reasonable. It was completely acceptable. It was a completely legitimate question for somebody to ask, and I think a legitimately good question and topic to discuss. And in discussing it, I laid out, here's why Disney is not just using it for marketing for Infinity War, because A, B, C, D, and E. I laid out very, very plainly, very quickly. Now that we've set the table, Jay Washington, who was at the time appearing on shows on a network that I created. Jay Washington, who at the time was appearing on shows on a network that I created and I built. And he decided to get on Twitter and he tweeted out that you just don't want movies with black heroes. You don't want movies with black heroes. That's what he tweeted out to me. Now, you got to understand. Jay Washington and I had worked together, not to a great degree or level, but we had been in the same room. We have talked, discussed, and he'd always been nice to my face. He'd always been nice to my face. Then he gets on Twitter and says, you just don't want movies with black heroes. Now, you got to understand, guys. That was, number one, shocking to me. It was hurtful to me. And it was confusing to me. Especially considering everything that I had been talking about Black Panther. Especially considering that if you watch the video, I lay out the argument about why. But his whole thing was, because a title of your video is asking a question about, hey, because of the proximity here, are they just using this movie? It was a marketing question. Are they just using this movie to promote this movie? And I laid out, no, they're not. It got so interesting that what Jay wrote started going around. You go onto Reddit, Jay Washington accuses John Campea of racism on Twitter. Because a video had a title asking a question, is a studio using one of their movies to promote another one of their movies. In which the video, I replied, no, they're not, and here's why. But this started going around. Jay Washington accuses John Campea of racism on Twitter. And I'm like, okay, sure. Let me bring this other one up here. I said, all right. I didn't blow up at Jay. I could have gone full both barrels and I could have gone at him. I could have eviscerated him. I could have destroyed him online if I wanted to. But I said, nope, I'm not going to do that. And since Jay made this public, which by the way, Jay Washington, as somebody who worked with me, as somebody who is enjoying the benefits of working on a network that I built, if Jay didn't have my digits in his phone, we mutually knew 20 other people that did have my number. If Jay was concerned, as somebody who has worked with me, if Jay had been concerned about, something that I made the title of a video, he could have easily gotten my contact information from any one of 20 people we mutually knew and given me a call and say, hey, John, listen, I've got a real issue with something you've done online. Can you walk me through this? But he didn't do that. He didn't do that. Jay Washington, a guy who was nice to my face, decided, hey, everybody, public forum, everybody, I want you to hear what I have to say. John Campea doesn't want movies with black heroes. He had to do that publicly. Made him feel real special. Made him feel real good to do that. I could have gone after him. I could have gotten back online. I could have fired back both barrels. I could have done all that. But I decided I don't want to damage that operation up the street that I built. I don't want to damage it. I don't want to drag people into it. I don't want to hurt other people. I don't want there to be collateral damage. And maybe there's just a disconnect here. So I tweeted back. Sorry, it took me a minute to find it. I tweeted back to Jay Washington. This was January 29th. Remember, this is after that video. This is like only 4 or 5 days after I made a video about why Black Panther is so important and it's important to have movies with black heroes. This is like only 4 or 5 days after I posted that video. So I posted Jay. I just took a breath and I posted back to Jay. Jay, may I suggest, just a suggestion, that before criticizing my video, you go watch it. Because it's like you're reviewing a movie that you didn't watch. My viewers know my position on Black Panther very well. I've done nothing but support it. To which Jay Washington then doubled down and said, I don't need to watch your video to know what you are. Okay. I followed that up by writing, again, I didn't go double barrels on him. I wrote, Jay, what you said was deeply hurtful, accusing me of not wanting a black superhero movie. Over the fact that somebody asked a movie marketing question is beneath you. Especially when everybody knows my position on Black Panther very clearly. And if you don't know my position, how about you try asking me? It got to the point that I decided, okay, I'm going to try to back channel this. I said, I kept this civil online. I kept it very civil. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to back channel this. So I got in touch with a few people who were still working at Collider that were mutual connections with Jay, something he should have done in the beginning. And I talked to both, and I talked to a couple people who were still at Collider. I said, look, Jay is doing this, and this is unacceptable. I got the internet writing that Jay Washington is running around accusing me of being racist and all this kind of stuff and saying that I don't want a hero. I don't want a movie with a black hero and all this kind of stuff. He clearly didn't even watch my video. And then he got on Twitter and said he didn't need to watch my video. And I said, you guys got to do something about this. To Jay Washington's credit, and I'm sorry that I'm going off on this, but I've kept this pent up for a couple of years now, and Jay just brought it up again. We'll get to that in a second. To Jay Washington's credit, I guess the other guys talked to him. I'm assuming he then watched the videos that he was complaining about. And Jay then put out a very nice tweet apologizing. He manned up, and I respected this. Jay Washington manned up, and he apologized publicly. And to me, great, we're good. And I never had to say another word about it. I never said another word about it. Jay manned up. He apologized. He wasn't listening to me, but he listened to a couple of people who were still at Collider at the time. He listened to them. I guess he watched the video, I'm assuming, because he manned up. He did the hard thing, and he apologized. And I respected that. Fast forward now 2 years. A little over 2 years now. And here we are today. In the midst of me staying up, you guys won't know this, in the midst of me staying up late hours into the night, trying desperately to support a network that Jay Washington appears on, trying desperately to support RB3, trying desperately to support Robert, and doing what I can do to help facilitate everybody calming down and everybody, let's make this right with everybody. In the midst of all of that, Jay Washington, the guy who had previously, a few years before, manned up, did the hard thing, apologized to me for his statements, all that kind of stuff. Jay Washington chose to get on a show the other day that RB3 was on as well. And it wasn't RB3 that did this, let's be clear. And he decided to drag me into the situation by referring to me as, well, saying, Rob, it doesn't help that Robert Meyer Burnett works with somebody who's real problematic. Yeah, he works with a guy who's really problematic. A guy who said that Black Panther was nothing but a marketing tool, nothing but a billboard for Infinity War. A dude who's real problematic. So I'm watching this. I'm like, this shit again? You spineless, weak jellyfish. You spineless, gutless, pathetic jellyfish. It wasn't bad enough that you pulled this crap 2 years ago, you pathetic jerk, that you then publicly apologized for. You publicly apologized for and said, I was wrong. I'm a man enough to admit that I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. And I respected you for that. And here we are again, 2 years later, blindsiding me again, just like he did last time. He's not man enough to call me on the phone. He's not man enough to do that. Just like 2 years ago. He wanted to blindside me. Out of nowhere. Jay Washington, who never calls me or emails me, out of nowhere, Jay Washington decided, because he read the title of a video without listening to the content or looking at the context of it, and say John Campea doesn't want movies with black heroes. Blindsided me with it. Finally apologized, and now 2 years later, blindsided me again. Dragging me into something that has nothing to do with me, and he decided his ass was still hurt from the fact that he had apologized 2 years ago and dragged me into it. Listen, let me be very fucking clear. I have never been anything but incredibly supportive of, especially Christian, who you guys know my affection for Christian. And I've talked on my show before how about everybody needs to give Christian a break, because all this crap that's going on around over there is not Christian's making. He didn't do it. He was dropped into an impossible situation because of the actions of other people. And it's not his fault. I have never been anything but supportive of SEN, of that whole network that Jay's been on. I've never once brought up again that blindsided hack job that Jay Washington tried to pull on me 2 years ago. I've never mentioned it again. I've always been publicly supportive. I've been trying to work out things and help, RB3 and Rob work out their issues. I've been trying to make good things for everybody. And then Jay Washington decides to cowardly again from a hey, everybody, look at me. I got to get on my public stage here. Watch me get on my public stage and blindside me and hack job me again. So as far as how I feel about what makes this especially hurtful is that especially since RB3 was in that video with him, and I do not hold let's be very, very clear here. I do not hold RB3 responsible for this in the least. Okay. Not at all. But it's particularly hurtful when I have just been spending the last couple of days on my show trying to talk up and support and calm things down for the dude who was on the video with him, RB3. I just spent days trying to tell people, listen, RB3's a good kid, man. He got caught up in an argument with somebody else that somebody else started. Rob started it. Let's be very clear about that. Rob started it. And he created the situation. And Rob understands that, and he does. And so RB3 got caught up in a situation, man, that anybody would get angry and hot in. You know, Rob said that to me. He's like, man, I understand RB3 got mad. I mean, anybody would have got mad in that situation. And I've been trying to support them. And then on a video that RB3 appears in, Jay tries to do a hatchet job on me. When I haven't said one negative, bad, shady thing about him in years, even though 2 years ago he tried to pull the same hatchet job on me again. I think the word I would use to describe this situation to me is disappointing. It's disappointing. So, I don't know. Look, as far as RB3 goes, the whole situation of what you're asking here about, RB3 and other people, look, it wasn't SCN that did it. It wasn't RB3 that did it. It wasn't anybody else that was there that did it. There was only one person that did this, and that was Jay Washington. It was Jay Washington and Jay Washington alone. So while I appreciate you asking the question, let's not throw RB3 under the bus for something somebody else did. Let's not throw SCN under the bus for what somebody else did. All right? Let's not do that. I hold one person responsible for this, and that's the person that did it, who once again, as a cowardly, spineless jellyfish, instead of talking to me, whatever, decided to, out of nowhere, blindside me like a coward and drop something like that. That's something he had already apologized. So let me ask you, was he lying before or is he lying now? Because he's being completely inconsistent. Comes out 2 years ago, says, oh, I'm a man. I can say when I was wrong and I apologize and blah, blah, blah. Man, I respected that. That wasn't easy to do. I respected that. Then he comes out 2 years later and decides, hey, I've got a stage right now. Woo, I got a stage. Let me double down on my lie. It's frustrating to me. It's frustrating to me. It's particularly frustrating to me because I thought this was an issue we had resolved. And then again, to like a coward, sneak up behind the bushes and hatchet job me. It bothers me. I'm not saying this one can't be worked out as well, just like the last time it was worked out. I'm not saying it can't be. I'm just saying I'm tremendously disappointed. So anyway, none of you guys tuned in here to hear me go off on that. So I apologize for that, but it is very frustrating. It is very frustrating and disappointing. It's disappointing. It's disappointing because of where it came from. It's disappointing because who it came from. It's disappointing because of the context in which it came from. And it's especially disappointing that it's the rehashing hatchet job lie of an issue that I thought had already been resolved 2 years ago. And the reason I thought it had been resolved is because the person in question said it was resolved. And yet here we are again. Anyway, there's that. Deep breath time for Campea. Sorry, I got hot about that. But look, again, I'm not saying this can't be resolved again. You know? People say and do stupid things. We all do. You do. I do. We all do. So I'm not saying this situation can't be resolved, but I don't know how it's going to be resolved this time. I don't know how, but it's still possible. So anyway, let's move on, shall we? Mandalorian of Gondor writes, hey, John, 2 questions. Man, I got to refocus here. Hey, John, 2 questions. Do you think with his popularity gaining traction over under 40%, we see a Deathstroke movie or show within the next 5 years? And from what you know of them in the comics, who, in your opinion, is the better villain, Doom or Lex? Well, Doom and Lex, let's not even talk about that. They're two such radically different. One is this superpowered, king of a nation and all this kind of stuff. Lex Luthor's a very different kind of character. They're both brilliant, fantastic. Or I mean, in their own right, so I'm not going to pick one of those two. They're both great. They're both iconic. As far as the Deathstroke, that's an interesting question. Is Deathstroke's popularity gaining traction right now? I don't know. See, to me, the height of the popularity of Deathstroke was back when you had Manu Bennett playing Deathstroke on Green Arrow, he was great as Deathstroke. Manu Bennett playing Deathstroke on Arrow was like one of the best things they ever did. It was fantastic. And then also you had, Joe Manganiello, the big Dungeons and Dragons guy, doing a quick appearance. He was supposed to be in the Ben Affleck thing. I don't know that the popularity of Deathstroke has ever been higher than it was at that point. I'm going to say under 40%, but I wouldn't say under like 15%, right? Like I wouldn't say, oh, it's got a 5% chance of happening, but I think 40 is kind of high. A chance exists. I just don't think it's quite as high as 40, so I'm going to take the under on 40%. All right, the Wakandan Forever writes, let's all sing it together. We were singing My, this here Anakin guy, maybe Vader someday later, now he's just a small fry. He left his home and kissed his mommy goodbye, saying, soon I'm going to be a Jedi. Stay healthy, productive, and safe. Thanks. Of course, one of my favorite Weird Al Yankovic songs, which was based on Star Wars The Phantom Menace. Because a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far away, Naboo was under an attack. And I thought me and Qui-Gon Jinn could talk the Federation in to maybe cutting them a little slack. But their response, it didn't thrill us. They locked the doors and tried to kill us. We escaped that gas. We met Jar Jar and Boss Nass. We took a bongo from the scene and we went to Theed to see the Queen. Yeah, anyway, enough of that. Yes, that Weird Al Yankovic song sung to the tune of Bye Bye Miss American Pie. One of the greatest Weird Al Yankovic videos of all time as well. Anyway, David Crabtree writes, if I could be serious for a moment, so if somebody had a YouTube channel where they discussed film and also made a bunch of dad jokes, would that make them a film pun? Dent? Okay. I'll give you the rim shot for that one. I'll give that one to you, Dave. Because a film pundit, get it? I don't know whether I should take offense at that, David. All right, I'll give that one to you. The Wakandan Forever also writes, seeing my heroes on screen list. Number 1, Black Panther. Number 2, Storm. Number 3, Falcon. Number 4, Spider-Man / Miles Morales. Number 5, Frozone. I love Frozone. Where is my super suit? Number 6, Blade. Number 7, Spawn. Number 8, War Machine. Number 9, Luke Cage. Number 10, Meteor Man. We were talking about Meteor Man a bunch lately. Seeing these characters on screen is the reason why I am the Wakandan Forever. You know what? I said it after I saw Incredible Steel. I'll say it again. Frozone is a Frozone. Look, I'm not saying I want Pixar to do spin-off movies. I'm not saying that, but I'm telling you, if Pixar was going to do any spin-off movie, Frozone has got to be the guy. I would totally go to see a standalone Frozone movie. Like, absolutely. It's like, why do you need it? It's for the greater good. I am your wife. I am the greatest good you are ever going to have. First of all, a movie about Frozone and his wife, and if they never have his wife on screen. Imagine if they made a movie about Frozone and his wife and she was never on screen. You only ever hear her talking to him from the other room. Okay, there you go. You're welcome, Pixar. I just gave you gold. All right. Call of Duty God writes and sends in a $50 tip. Thank you so much for supporting the channel on that level, Call of Duty God. Hey, John, what if, LOL, would you still have such appreciation for Man of Steel if the scene where Clark's mother gets almost killed by Zod's henchmen, but they kill her instead? Clark comes home too late to save her. Now Snyder uses the 1978 Superman 1/2. What would I have done? Well, listen, I still would have appreciated the movie because if that's what happened, that's what happened, right? It would have been intriguing to see. If you look back at Man of Steel, when Clark shows up back at the Kent farm, pissed because Zod and the other Kryptonians are there harassing and threatening his mother. And Clark loses his shit. And he's like, you threatened my mother? I got to tell you, it would have been interesting. It would be interesting to see a what if variation of that. If Clark gets there, knowing his chemistry, relationship, the bond between him and his mother. If he had showed back up at the Kent farm, I should say, and found that they had killed her, Oh my God. Like, for those of you who know what I'm talking about, we're talking about the origins of Injustice Gods Among Us, I think. Because for those of you who know the story of Injustice Gods Among Us, you know, Lois and his baby get killed. Superman crosses the line, murders Joker for killing Lois, for being responsible for the murder of Lois. I mean, technically Superman murdered Lois, but it was the Joker's fault. And it leads him down a dark path, and Superman becomes a villain. I think if Clark shows back up in Man of Steel to that farm and he sees Zod kill Martha, you might be seeing the origins of Injustice Gods Among Us. You might. I mean, it would be an interesting thing to see, dude. Like, absolutely. Oh my God. Because then something breaks, right? Like, it's not just that he would be met. Something would break inside Clark. Something fundamental would break inside of him and snap. And where that could lead to, narrative-wise, might have been fascinating. So, I'm just glad that they didn't do that, but it could have also been very fascinating to see which way that story would have gone. Anyway, thanks for writing that in, man. And listen, because it was $50 or more, I'm going to answer this question again in its own standalone video in a few weeks. Keep your eyes open for it, and we're going to get caught up on those. Thanks a lot for that Call of Duty God, but whoo, imagine the narrative possibilities there. All right, Damo Davies writes, with regards to the upcoming Labyrinth sequel, one name to play Jareth the Goblin King springs to mind. Tilda Mother Effing Swinton. She and Bowie were quite close, and she had accepted some posthumous awards on his behalf and is beyond capable. True. But like right now, we don't even know. Here's the thing. We don't know if the Goblin King is even going to be a part of the movie or not. I assume he is. Then do you want to... If you're making this movie, do you want to invite in the whole debate and discussion about switching the genders of the character? Now, Cate Blanchett played Bob Dylan once. So I guess you could have Tilda Swinton, who, by the way, you got to see her guest spot on What We Do in the Shadows. I guess you could have Tilda Swinton playing... You're not saying that the character's gender has changed. It's still Jareth the Goblin King. It's just that it's Tilda Swinton playing it. I guess you could do that. Like I said, Cate Blanchett played Bob Dylan once. So why not? And there is something poetic to that as well because of all the stuff that you mentioned. I'll tell you what, Damo, you got my vote. I'm up for it. I mean, they can do many other things that'll work just as well, but if they did that, I'm on board for it. I think that's an interesting idea. All right, Damo Davies also writes, there are some movies which are what I would class as difficult watches and impacted me in such a way in which I couldn't class them as entertainment. Movies such as Schindler's List, 12 Years a Slave, Queen and Slim, which was really powerful. Plus, Boys Don't Cry are on the list. Add Detroit to that list. Detroit was another one. John Boyega was in that one. That one was that's another one of those movies that was really, really good, but really hard to watch again. Like, it would be very, very hard and difficult to watch that one again. But I agree. Like, it is funny because movies create experiences and the experiences give us entertainment. But it's hard to watch movies like the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan with the battle on the beach. It's hard to watch that and call it entertaining. It's hard to watch 12 Years a Slave and call it entertaining. But it's a semantic thing about what is entertainment. If it's something that engages us emotionally, is that entertainment? Whether the emotion is happy, sad, whatever. But I agree with you, man. It does feel weird to look at any of those movies and call them entertaining, even though they're brilliant. You know what I mean? So you're right. It's a little tough on that level. You're absolutely right. All right. Damo also writes, Annie Wilkes, played by Kathy Bates in Misery, is patient zero for the toxic fan community. All the online haters and trolls are amateurs compared to her and showed the new kids how it's done. I am kidding. But I mean, look, take modern fans out of it. Kathy Bates, if you guys have not seen Misery, Kathy Bates, who I believe won the Academy Award for Misery, Kathy Bates plays I guess whatever you would define as a toxic fan, she plays the archetype. She's the blueprint for what a toxic fan is, right? Like, You did something with a character that I didn't want you to do. I mean, it's great. The movie's brilliant. Brilliantly acted. I believe it might have been nominated for Best Picture as well. But anyway, I know Kathy Bates won the Academy Award for Best Actress for that. It is crazy good. It's crazy good. You got to see it if you have not seen it yet. And I know the older it gets, fewer and fewer people have seen it, but you really should treat yourself. It's based on a Stephen King novel, if I'm not mistaken. I think Misery is based on a Stephen King novel, if I'm not mistaken. So absolutely worth checking out. You absolutely should. Go and check that out. All right, Dame also writes, I have just watched the entire Police Academy movies 1 through 7 this week, and by gosh, they are all guilty pleasures apart from the first. What happened to Steve Guttenberg's career after the 80s? 3 Men and a Baby, Cocoon, Diner, Short Circuit. I mean, I know. You know what's funny? And yeah, listen, I obviously love the first Police Academy. I even like the second Police Academy. I try to forget the other ones, but it's interesting. Steve Guttenberg, he was one of the biggest stars in the 80s. Because you're right to point out these movies. Cocoon, Diner, Short Circuit. I mean, and others. I remember when, in my first year, actually, of moving to Los Angeles, I got invited to a premiere of a small little independent film. And by premiere, I mean there was like 50 people there. But I got invited to this premiere of this small little independent film that Steve Guttenberg was the star of. And I got to meet him, which was crazy because, I mean, those movies you just listed, whether it's, Cocoon or 3 Men, the 3 Men movies were amazing. Like all those, and obviously Police Academy. So it was a real thrill to meet him, and he was very nice. But I remember thinking, I was talking with the girl I was dating at the time, and I was like, why is he not a big star today? Like, I've never really gotten. By the way, Steve Guttenberg just did a couple of years ago. He was one of the significant characters on the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson show, Ballers, for I think season 3 of Ballers, season 4 maybe. Anyway, he was like one of the main guys in one of the seasons of Ballers, and it was great seeing him on the screen again. You're right. I honestly don't know what caused the fall off in his career, but I do know this: he had a fantastic career. And he's got a career that 99.99999% of all actors ever in Hollywood would kill to have. But I don't know why he's not as big today. But look, he had a great run. I still get excited when I get to see him and stuff. But I mean, Steve Guttenberg's a dude's got nothing to complain about. He had nothing to complain about. All right, Dame also writes in, Kristen Kennedy, yourself, Aaron Darling, Dennis Zen, and the wonderful John Schnepp. Can you guess what I watched last night? A dose of nostalgia with this group discussing how big of a role Luke, Leia, and Han will have in the Star Wars trilogy. Man, I remember, we brought that up the other day, where we were talking about, it's fun looking back at our speculation videos that we did prior to movies coming out that have long since come out now, right? And it's always fun. And Star Wars in particular, going back and talking about theories, like our own theories. What do we think they're going to do and all that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you, I continue to do that. I do that once in a while. I do that once in a while. I get on there and I'll dig up these old videos. Like, what did I think was going to happen with Deadpool? And I go back and find some old Deadpool video of mine, some Deadpool speculation video before the first Deadpool movie came out. It's enlightening. Let's put it that way. It's enlightening. All right. Josh writes, 1 of 3. I watched all 3 of the sequel trilogy films together as one movie. 7 was a great way to start it off. 8 did continue 7's plots, and I enjoyed it, except for Finn and Rose's ridiculous side plot. I mean, let's not even talk about frickin' Cantu Bite. The stuff with Luke training Rey was definitely a highlight. Also elevated the character of Kylo Ren for me. It wasn't just his father that influenced his turn. It was how Luke had treated him too. So he and Rey slowly went from hating each other to understanding each other's pain was earned. To me, they were 2 people who struggled to find their place in life. Kylo was let down by Luke and Han. I don't know how that Han let him down, though. I don't know that Han let him down. Anyway, Rey was by her parents. Both were just 2 lost souls who connected over similar circumstances of abandonment and needing someone who understood them. The throne room fight was great. So was the fight between Luke and Kylo. To me, It would have been more epic if it was an actual duel. Regardless, Luke's sacrifice was earned to me. Ryan gave him a nice character arc in the film. Oh, and Yoda was great. In 9, Rey is once again struggling. No Luke, no Han, only Leia, and Kylo remains. It continues 7 and 8, but is more of a follow-up to 7 than 8. It plays out well for me. Her being a Palpatine was a twist for sure. Would have been more earned if threaded through all 3 films. The Kylo and Rey stuff is great though. Duel on the Death Star, like it overall. In conclusion, Your Honor, Kylo definitely carries the sequel trilogy on his back. Adam Driver showed great range and skill in all 3 films. I agree that I think Adam Driver, who other than people who watched that HBO series Girls, I think that's the name of it, Girls, that he was on, and it wasn't a show that I watched, but I know it was a very popular show and I know he was on it. I think the Star Wars new trilogy introduced a lot of the world to Adam Driver. And I'm so glad they did, because then you go and see him in something like Marriage Story, which, oh my God, him and Scarlett Johansson are so freaking good in that movie. Anyway, and I'm looking forward to seeing his career moving forward. Yeah, look, your pacing kind of follows similar roles to mine. I loved The Force Awakens. I loved that movie. I really liked Last Jedi. There are certainly issues that I had with the film, which I talked about in my very first tweet when I came out of the premiere. Like the very first thing I tweeted when I came out of the premiere was, I had a very good time, but first thing I wrote was, what they did with Benicio, I thought the Benicio del Toro character was completely wasted. I hated the whole Canto Bight, the planet, the side mission that Finn and Rose went on. I think like Rose is such a delightful little character. You could have done some really, really cool things with her and they didn't. I loved Finn from the first movie. I thought they could have expanded on that in the second and they didn't. And but overall, I liked the film very much. It's just that I did have some issues with it. And then to me, Rise of Skywalker just came off the rails. Rise of Skywalker, look, we all criticized Star Wars for, even while they were putting out movies that I really liked, they didn't do this with an overall plan to start. Like they needed to sit down and chart out, here's what is going to happen in movie 1, and that's going to lead into what happens in movie 2, and then that's going to lead into what we're going to do in movie 3, and have it all chart out so the 3 films can work together. Much like, even though I don't like the prequels all fit together. I don't like the prequels, but you know what? They fit together. Because George Lucas had a plan for all 3 movies. He didn't have every single detail charted out, but he basically had his plan for part 1, part 2, and part 3, and how they all fit together. And like or dislike the prequels, they fit together and they flowed well together. The new films didn't, because of that lack of planning. And it really did catch up with it in the 3rd part. But yeah, I like your analysis there of the Kylo and Rey, the parallels that they kind of follow, but on opposite sides of the tracks. I like your analogy for that. That's well observed. And yeah, I kind of follow this generally, not specifically, but I follow generally in your same path of thinking there. Thanks for bringing that up, Josh. All right, next up, Josh Bing also writes, with regards to Indiana Jones 5, I say, have Ford play an older Indy with the guy who played a young Ford in Age of Adeline. Play because Harrison Ford's that he of course had the actor who played a young him. Age of Adeline, play a young Indy in flashbacks. The kid looked and sounded exactly like a young Harrison Ford. Have past and present coincide in one story, could be fun. Here's my one problem with that. If you want to do a young Indiana Jones, you don't need to get an actor who looks just like Harrison Ford. You don't need to do that. I mean, look, we as an audience are sophisticated enough that, oh, okay, that's the young Indiana Jones. But you know, if I got a picture, this is me. If I got a picture of Harrison Ford when he was that age, he doesn't look like that. It doesn't matter. I mean, why am I freezing on his name? The guy who played. Oh, I'm freezing on his name now. Anyway, you don't need somebody who looks like who looks like him. That's not a good starting point. The starting point of let's do our movie so we can put this guy in it is not generally a good starting point for when you're planning out a movie, right? Because okay, for instance, let's go to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Shia LaBeouf. There is no way that you would ever believe there is any genetic connection between Shia and Harrison Ford. He looks nothing like him. They are not father and son. That's okay. We're okay with that. We know, okay, he doesn't look like his son, but it doesn't matter. We know he's his son. You know, Chris Hemsworth does not look like Anthony Hopkins in the least. Or Rene Russo. He doesn't look like Rene Russo or Anthony Hopkins in the least. But we're okay with that. It's okay. We're good. We know that's supposed to. So if you're going to do a young Indiana Jones, then you just go out and get the best possible actor you can, and then you use makeup to give him some similarities, but it's not really that important. I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong about this. I believe we already heard that the producer of Indy 5 say, no, this is Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones movie. So I don't think they're going to be doing a old Indiana Jones sitting in a rocking chair. Let me tell you about the time that I went and found this, and it sprung 7 snakeheads and bit me on my wiener. Like, I don't think, and then you flash into a young Indiana Jones showing that, you know, a magical totem springing forth 7 serpent heads that bit him on his wiener. I don't think you need to do that. And I think the producers of the film have already said, no. This is Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones movie. So I think they've already kind of laid out that this is going to be all him. It's not going to be a young Indy. It's not going to be whatever. I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, if you've heard some different things come out. And now that we've got the director of Logan, now James Mangold, now that we've got Mangold directing Indiana Jones 5, he may have a different idea. I mean, maybe he does want to do young Indiana Jones with an older Indiana Jones telling stories. But then I don't think Harrison Ford wants anything to do with that. And if Harrison Ford doesn't want that, then that's what they're going to do. Listen, bottom line is, I think they're going to go with an all Harrison Ford Indiana Jones film, if they even make it. And I'm not 100% convinced they're going to make it. I'm not 100% convinced they're going to make it. So anyway, we'll see. All right. Josh Bing also writes, one last one for today, John, but thank you for the Oasis and everything you do. I know you don't like to talk about other things other than movies, but when you broke your rule, that one show as a 21-year-old black man, it meant everything to me. Much love, brother. Well, I appreciate that, man. And thank you for being here and being a part of our show and for sending in so many great fun questions and supporting the channel on that level. So seriously, man, my thanks go to you for being there and being a part of it. And thank you for being part of our community, man. I appreciate it so much. All right. Next up, Markel19 writes, hey, John, I personally like Jared Leto's Joker. Me too, actually. You and I are in the minority on that. And I hope the Ayer cut gets finished. If Leto ever returned to the role, what would you want his Joker to improve on? And what do you think was missing from his Joker? Listen, there was so little of Joker. They cut a lot of the Joker stuff out of that Suicide Squad movie, which was admittedly a mess of a film, but I enjoyed it. I got to admit, here's that word we were talking about earlier, entertainment. I was entertained by it. I acknowledge it was a mess of a film. You can tell they had a music video company come in and do the editing. Absolutely. I have no qualms with that. I can't argue or debate anybody who doesn't like this movie because I get it. But for whatever reason, I found it entertaining. One of the things I really did enjoy about the film was Joker, particularly in his connection with Harley Quinn. I thought their awful, black as midnight, toxic, ooey gooey, destructive, codependent relationship was magic to watch on screen. I thought it was magic to watch on screen. And if they ever did do more with Jared Leto's Joker, which I don't think they're going to do, but I think it would be great if they did. I want to see that Joker and Harley. I know they're trying to make Harley her own standalone hero, and I get it, but I loved Harley with Joker, and I love Joker with Harley. They're both great characters, and they both can stand on their own. I'm not a fan of the Harley Quinn movie per se. I love the TV animated show though, but I'd love to see Margot Robbie and Jared Leto on screen together again in those characters, because every second that they were on screen together in Suicide Squad, I loved. The other stuff, meh, but every moment that those two were on screen together, personally, I loved. Now, I know I'm in the minority, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I really did like their chemistry together, but that's just me. All right, guys, just a couple more, then we're going to take a short break. I've been going for about an hour and 15 minutes. My throat's starting to get a little bit sore here. Niall Duffy writes, hey, John from Belfast. Man, lately people have been talking about Ireland. I've been dying to go to Ireland. And then recently, my wife watches this food show. I can't remember the name of the show, but it's a guy who was like the producer and showrunner for Everybody Loves Raymond. And he's got like this food show on Netflix right now where he travels around the world. Like he's hilarious and just trying different foods around the world. Anyway, we just watched an episode where he goes to Ireland. And I'm like, I've wanted to go to Ireland for so long. You want to know why? Seriously, it's the stupidest reason. Because I'm a big U2 fan. I seriously, that's the reason I've always wanted to go to Ireland, is because that's where U2 is from, but whatever. But watching this episode, I was like, oh my God, I got to visit Ireland. Anyway. Hi, John from Belfast. I've been following you since the AMC days. My favorite U2 album is Achtung Baby, even better than The Real Thing. It changed the way I thought about music. I recommend it. I recommend The Way Back, which is great, and Some Like It Hot, which is classic. You, Robert, and Aaron, helped me get through the lockdown. Well, thank you so much for saying that. Achtung Baby, I remember I was really surprised by Achtung Baby, and it took me a minute to get on board with it, because when you go back to YouTube's albums prior to that, right? Whether you're talking Joshua Tree or War or Boy or whatever, they had their very distinct sound, right? Which changed a little bit from album to album. They basically had their sound. Achtung Baby was a real departure. I mean, that was a very different sounding album. But I'll tell you what, I got into that album a lot. And let me pull up some of the songs. Let me bring it up here. Okay, first of all, so Even Better Than The Real Thing, which was great. Mysterious Waves. It's all right. She moves in mysterious ways. I love Is Blindness is beautiful. Obviously, the best one on it is One. I think the best song on that album is One. You know, have you come here for forgiveness? Have you come to raise the dead? I love that song. Ultraviolet, Baby, 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 Light My Way. I think it's the greatest movie trailer song maybe ever. Anyway, I love the album. I mean, Joshua Tree is still to me the greatest album of all time. But Achtung, which was such a departure for them, like a totally different sound and style, and it was still so good. Yeah, it spoke volumes about the band. So anyway, thanks for writing that in, man. And I hope I get to visit Ireland really soon. I really do. I've been wanting to visit there for a long, long time. There in Australia, I really want to visit. And London. I want to go to London so bad. Anyway. And of course, Italy, because I'm Italian. But anyway, KJ writes, hey, John, you're the best. Thank you so much, man. A few weeks ago, a movie called Becky was somebody just mentioned Becky earlier. And Kevin James, that's right. I said guy from King of Queens, right? Kevin James, that's right. Where Kevin James plays the villain. It came out yesterday on demand, and I checked it out. Not amazing, but a fun, gory slasher, really. And James was actually pretty solid to recommend. Yeah, I remember a few weeks ago, somebody mentioned this movie, Becky, and said that Kevin James plays a role that you've never seen him type of play before. Like he's seriously the villain of the film, and he's like this murderer. And I'm like, seriously, Kevin James? I've never seen him do something like that. That would be interesting to see. So I have not seen it yet myself, KJ. Somebody else just mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I appreciate your recommendation. And listen, maybe it's not amazing. But I'm still curious as hell. To see Kevin James in that kind of a role. I would love to. All right, let's move on here. Where do we go? Oh, there we go. Ryan Lohner writes, one more great civil rights movie is The Long Walk Home. It is. That's tremendous. About the Montgomery bus boycott. I didn't care much for The Help, largely because of everything it did was already done better by this movie. Yeah, I mean, like when I mentioned The Help the other day, which was nominated for Best Picture, I mentioned right off the top, I know not everybody has the same affection for The Help as I did. But that was a movie that made, for whatever reason, it made a tremendous impact on me. And it made me a major fan overnight of Viola Davis, of Octavia Spencer. It was, Emma Stone was fantastic in it. Absolutely. Bryce Dallas Howard was fantastic in it. It was just, I just fell in love with that movie, man. I just, for whatever reason, and this is the key about the subjectivity of film, movies will all hit us in different ways. And I recognize that The Help hit me in such a powerful way that it didn't necessarily hit other people in that same way. And I get it. And that's why when I brought it up the other day, I said, look, not everybody is going to agree with this, me putting this one on my list, but it is my list, and it is one that made a profound impact on me. And so I got to mention. So I mentioned The Help, and we made The Help a part of it. But yeah, The Long Walk Home is fantastic. Ben Rayner writes, "Hey, John, have you seen that YouTube video about the Zoom call going wrong? The host of the video turns off his camera on purpose to go do something. The camera turns back on accidentally, and then you see him come back with lotion." And I'll leave it at that. Nope. But I want everybody to remember, if you think you're having a bad day, do I need to finish that statement? If you think you're having a bad day, you can at least go, and I haven't seen this video. I don't even know if I want to go find this video, but at least you can put down your drink and go, at least I'm not that guy. At least I'm not that guy today. Oh, that sounds horrible. All right, I'll tell you what, guys. I'm going to take just a quick, short break here right now. I am going to rest my vocal cords for a second, stretch my legs. I got to refill my drink. We've been going for almost 2 hours, or an hour and a half at this point. We've been going for an hour and 20 minutes right now. I got to take a little bit of break. So don't go anywhere. Hang tight with me. We're just going to be gone for a couple of minutes. Talk amongst yourselves. Go use the bathroom. Do what you got to do. So hang tight, guys, and we will be right back. And we are back. Thank you so much for your patience and indulgence as I took a little bit of a break there. Went and refreshed my glass of Zevia Cola. Zevia Cola, sponsor me, you sons of bitches. Brought to you by John Campea. All right. Let's move on here, shall we? We still got a bunch to get to, so we're going to start going through this. Let's see, that was Ben Rayner that we just got. Oh, that poor guy. That poor guy. James Argento writes, fun fact. If and when the NHL returns this year, it will be the first time the Maple Leafs have played a meaningful game post June 1st, and it only took a pandemic to make it happen. The previous latest day played was January, February, May 31st, 1999, when the Leafs lost to Hasek-led Sabres in the Eastern Conference Finals. Man, listen, you just had to find the bullet hole and stick your finger in it, didn't you? I am, for those of you who don't know, I'm a lifelong Toronto Maple Leafs fan. I don't talk a lot about the Leafs on this show because, you know, a lot of my audience is American. not everybody in America follows hockey, so I don't talk about it. But it is the number one source of my passionate fandom. I bleed blue and white. I love the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they suck. And they have never been, follow this, they have never even been to the Stanley Cup Finals, let alone won. They have never been to the Stanley Cup Finals the entire time that I have been on this earth. The entire time I have been on this earth, the Toronto Maple Leafs have never been to the Stanley Cup Finals. You want to talk about futility, man. It is tough sometimes being a Toronto Maple Leaf fan, but they've been looking good lately. They've been looking good. So let's see what happens here, James. Thanks for that harsh, terrible reminder. By the way, how great is Dominic Hasek? I was talking to a buddy of mine a few weeks ago, a Canadian buddy of mine, and I kind of threw out there, I said, I think you got it. We're talking about hockey. I said, I think Dominic Hasek has to maybe be in the conversation of maybe the greatest goaltender of all time. To which, some people, I'm telling you, there were times when Dominic Hasek just decided nobody is going to score on me tonight. And there's nothing you could do about it. Like, he was the most ridiculous goaltender I've ever seen play. And even watching Team Canada play against his team, in the Olympics and everything like that, and it doesn't matter. It never mattered how good or bad his Detroit Red Wings team was. It didn't matter how good or bad his national team was. It didn't matter how good or bad the Buffalo Sabres were. If you can't score on their team, they're going to beat you. And Dominic Hasek, there would be nights that he goes, yeah, I'm kind of bored. I think I'm not going to let anybody score tonight. And Dominic Hasek would just shut you down. It was insane. It was so frustrating. It was so frustrating because he was never on one of my favorite teams. So I'm always like, whether it was playing on in the national stage or in the NHL, I'm like, we're playing Dominic Hasek. We're going to lose. I mean, he was insanely good. All right, next up. Wakandan Forever writes, film fans need something to do now that theaters are closed. Catch up on movies or read the book of your favorite movie is based on. The good old standbys never hurt. Volunteer, donate, pray, meditate, or call a friend. Bonus, support the John Campea Show. That's a good bonus as well. No, seriously. Look, what we've been saying, both Rob and me and a lot of other people as well, are saying, look, what we're living in sucks. And that was just when it was just a pandemic. What we're living in sucks right now. It's a terrible time. A lot of big and a lot of important things going on. But you always need to try to find ways to make lemonade out of the lemons, right? And some people doing that by, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this opportunity that I'm stuck at home to get some home projects done. Some people's going, you know what? I've always dreamed about writing a novel. I'm going to sit down and start writing a novel. Some people going like, I've always wanted to watch the Godfather films and I never did. And they watch the Godfather films. Some people like, you know what? I've always wanted to help the homeless projects. You know what? Just a little bit of a plug. Let me give you a plug. Ann and I volunteer with the Burlington. Burlington's a city near my home city of Hamilton. With the Burbank, the local Burbank City Hall, we volunteer with the homeless programs that they have. We don't talk about it much, but let me use this as a platform to promote it to you guys. Get involved. Go to your local city hall and find out what, charitable functions do you guys do? What public good functions do you guys practice that you need volunteers in? And go and get involved. Use this as an opportunity to go and get involved and help your community. Just stuff like that. Make lemonade out of the lemons you get. Doesn't change the fact that they're surrounded by a bunch of lemons right now, but try to find some silver linings if you can. Try to find something that can be productive use of your time. Get involved. Do some self-improvement things, do some self-reflection. There's a lot of big issues going on that maybe there's some big issues going on that you've never really thought about. Maybe take this time to become more acquainted with the issues being discussed in our society today and getting more well-versed in it. I don't know, find ways to make lemonade out of the lemons. That's kind of the message. And I agree with you 100%, Wakandan Forever. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, hey, John. I understand why we as movie fans want the theaters to be open ASAP, but I don't understand the logic behind Nolan and Warner Brothers' stance on Tenet. In my opinion, they're risking $100 million with 80% of cinemas and half of their capacity to end with a possible $40 to $50 million. Okay, so it's a fair thing you bring up, but there's an opposite side to that coin, Anonymous. There's an opposite side of the coin. Yes, on one side of the coin, you're talking about coming out into theaters when people haven't gone to the movies in a long time, when not all the theaters are going to be open, but NATO is saying about 90% of the theaters are going to be open, but still not all of them. And in those theaters, they're going to be like 50%, 40% capacity. How on earth is Tenet supposed to make any money? Well, because you got to flip the coin over now. The other side of that coin is this. Yes, not every single movie theater will be open, although most will. Yes, it'll be 50 or 40% seating capacity. Yes. But it will be the only game in town. It doesn't have to compete against the 3 other films that normally open on the same weekend. It doesn't have to compete against the 10 other films that came out previously that are all on the other screens as well. Tenet is going to be the first movie out of the gate with nothing else opening on that weekend. So yeah, maybe it's only 80% of theaters. Yeah, maybe it's only 50% capacity, but it's got all of that to itself. It's got all of that to itself. Does that mitigate the fact that it's not every single theater and that it's 50% capacity? I think it can. I think it can. So that's the gambit. That's the roll of the dice that Warner Brothers is taking on this right now. You know, and you know, somebody else said that you got Robert Pattinson there, you got John David Washington. By the way, I was just talking about The Rock's show Ballers. That's where I discovered John David Washington. And by the way, he's also in Black He's incredible in it. I think John David Washington is going to do an incredible job in this movie because I loved him in BlacKkKlansman. I really liked him in Ballers. I thought he was really good in that. Anyway, I think that can mitigate it. Will it 100%? We don't know. But I'll tell you this. As restaurants have been opening in Los Angeles, Ann and I went for a walk the other night, and all the restaurants, even if they were only 50% capacity, all the restaurants were full. They were all full to their capacity, what their 50% capacity is. Nearly every restaurant we saw had a lineup going outside because, again, they were only 50% capacity, so people had to stand 6 feet apart in line outside. I'm just telling you, I don't think we should underestimate how badly a lot of people feel like they want to get back out there. Not everybody does, and that's understandable. But don't underestimate that there are a lot of people out there that are itching to get back to quote-unquote normal life. Whether that's smart or dumb is another discussion, but there's a lot there. So when you've got that, you've got all these people itching to get out of the house again. And you're going to have these movie theaters, even at 50% capacity, and you're going to have those theaters to yourself when not another movie has released for 3 months. I'm not saying it will be a hit, but I'm saying I think the potential is there that it can still do very, very well. So I think that's the roll of the dice that Warner Brothers is taking right now. Whether it works out one way or the other, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I do believe the potential is there that it could score big. The potential is there that it could score big. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be a big flop. Maybe it won't. We'll have to wait and find out. Good question, though, Anonymous. All right. The Wakandan Forever writes, the list of movies that changed me. 1, Black Panther. Number 2, Won't You Be My Neighbor? Oh my God. I almost cried just thinking about that movie. Number 3, Boys Don't Cry. Number 4, The Kite Runner. Oh, dude, nobody mentions The Kite Runner on this show. The Kite Runner, it was a brave, powerful, moving movie set in a different culture, looking through a different set of eyes. I'm so glad you brought up The Kite Runner. Very, very few people ever, including me, ever bring it up. That's a great one to bring up. Number 5, Mississippi Dam. Number 6, 13th. Number 7, The Great Debaters. I like The Great Debaters. Number 8, Midnight Ramble. The Story of Race Films. Number 9, Boys in the Hood. And number 10, Get Out. Yeah, that's a good list, man. Again, I'm not saying Kite Runner is my favorite film on that list. I'm just saying that that's one that is really, really good. And I think it got some Oscar nominations too, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on, let me just pull this up just for a second. The Kite Runner. It was based on a book as well, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. It was nominated for, but did not win, Best Achievement in Music Written for Motion Pictures. Man, part of me thought it got nominated for Best Picture, but there was something that didn't feel right, and it didn't. But, and it also got nominated for Useless Golden Globe for Best Foreign Language Film. Kite Runner is so good, man. Kite Runner is so good. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, let me just bring it up here so you can take a peek. This is Kite Runner. It's kind of like a Fox and the Hound story. If you guys are familiar with the Disney film Fox and the Hound, there are thematic overlays of Fox and Hound in Kite Runner, which It's a powerful little movie, man. If you guys get a chance to watch it, thank you so much, Wakanda Forever, for bringing that one up, because that one's great. Chris Warden writes, I remember reading something about Tom Cruise and Paramount planning to shoot MI7 and MI8 back to back. I think that was years ago. Is that still happening, or is he doing that space movie once principal photography is wrapped on MI7? Here's the thing. I don't even think the space movie is the next one he does after MI7. I think he's got another movie lined up to do after MI7, and then maybe the space movie. If I'm not mistaken. Look, as far as I know, there hasn't been any talk about them doing MI7 and MI8 back to back for a long time. I remember there was some initial buzz about that, but I haven't heard anything about that in years. So I don't think that's the case anymore. I could be mistaken. But I don't think that's the case anymore. Yeah. So there's that. And again, I don't even think that space movie he's going to be right after. I think he's got another one lined up. I can't remember what it is, but I think he's got another one. Actually, you know what? Why don't I just look it up here? Hold a second. Tom Cruise. Here we go. Of course, he's already filmed Top Gun, so that's not going to get in the way of anything. Top Gun. Oh yeah, they're still saying he's going to do Live, Die, Repeat, but who knows what's going to happen with that. Luna Park. That's the other one. Luna Park. By the way, they're saying Doug Liman, the director of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Jumper, things like that. They've announced that he's going to direct that Tom Cruise space movie, but he's also directing Tom Cruise in another movie they've been trying to get going for a long time called Luna Park. So what order things come in, I'm not 100% sure of those, but I'm pretty sure that they're not filming 7 and 8 concurrently, like say Matrix 2 and 3 did, or that, the Lord of the Rings films did. I don't think that's happening now. Could be wrong. I'm just saying, because I've heard so little about it, I don't think that's the case anymore. All right, good question though, Chris. Next up, Mark Newman writes, finally got around to watching Joker. Now, maybe wasn't the best time given some current disturbing real world parallels. It's certainly well made and acted, etc., but I just kind of felt bummed out at the end. But Mark, first of all, Mark, I totally see where you're coming from. I do. But when you're talking about movies like the John Boyega movie Detroit, or you're talking about Joker, or you're talking about movies that have eerie echoes of what's actually going on in our world, I agree. It makes them more challenging to watch right now. But I also think an argument could be made that it makes it even more important that they be watched right now. Challenging, yeah. Make it hurt. Maybe it's like a little uncomfortable and we're squirming in our seat a little bit while you're watching it. Yes. But I think maybe an argument could be made that it makes it even more important and relevant that we watch these movies now. Movies that speak to things like that now. I think now it's more relevant time than ever to watch Do the Right Thing. We were just talking about Spike Lee's movie, Do the Right Thing. I think now is a more relevant time than ever to watch Do the Right Thing. I think even though it's uncomfortable right now to watch Do the Right Thing, it's uncomfortable to watch right now. I'm not going to lie. Of course it's uncomfortable to watch right now. But it's maybe even more important to watch right now, and more profound right now. It's always interesting how the context of our culture does affect how we view the movies we're watching right now, regardless of the context and time and issues at hand. But it does kind of accentuate it, and maybe there. So I agree with you, Mark. I agree with you. But it maybe even makes them a little bit more important to watch right now at the same time. But anyway, good thoughts, man. Good thoughts. All right, Luke1234 writes, love the Man of Steel commentary video. Thank you so much, man. We worked very, very hard on that. I love that movie. And again, it was not a video meant to convince anybody else to like it. It was simply a video to say, I've said for so long that I love this movie. Let me make a video to explain why I like it. Doesn't mean you need to. It's just, let me explain why I appreciate this movie so much. So anyway, thank you for checking it out. Both Jonathan and I worked very, very hard on that movie. I love the Man of Steel commentary video, but it got me thinking, how do you or your crew take clips from a DVD or digital copy and use them? Not talking about fair use. I mean, what kind of software? Thank you. Well, I mean, let me point something out here very, very clearly. I don't use clips. I don't use clips in any of my videos. Because clips can cause problems. with the YouTube algorithm and getting your videos flagged and all that kind of stuff. So I simply do not use clips. There are other YouTube channels that do it, and they find ways to circumvent the YouTube algorithms and all that kind of stuff, and more power to them. That's great. But I have had so many bad experiences with using clips that I just don't do it anymore. So that's why in my Superman video, I just use still images, and we use the Burns effect, where we move the images around to give motion to the images, but we just use still images. We don't use clips. As far as how do you like rip clips and stuff, like, there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different for this, the most basic way you could do it. And by the way, I'm telling you this for legitimate purposes, not for doing anything piracy related, but there are like a lot, just the most basic way to do is just get some kind of screen capture software. So just something you've got on your screen, you can capture that. Whatever's on your screen, you can just capture it. So probably the easiest way to do it is just screen capture software. That's the easiest way to do it. But again, I want to encourage for legitimate uses only, not for pirating issues. So there's that. All right. Thanks for asking, Luke 1234. All right. Preston Bell writes, hello, John. Hello, Preston. So this weekend was supposed to be the opening weekend for Wonder Woman 84. I forgot about that. I did. Not too far away, though. It's not far away. You may have touched on this, but do you think that sales could be just as good in August as they would have been this weekend? By the way, happy birthday to my mom. Happy birthday to your mom, indeed. You listen, there's, again, much like the Tenet argument, there is a two-sided coin here when talking about Wonder Woman 84. On the one hand, you're like, oh, it had to move its release date, and you know, not a lot of people might not be fully back into going to the movies. Maybe. But also maybe by opening up in August, it may get even more interested in it because so many people have not been going to the movies for so long. And I think a lot of people are going to be very excited about just getting back out and doing something normal again. I'm already seeing them filling up the restaurants. I think we'll see them filling up the movie theaters to 50% capacity. I think we're going to see that happen. So in an odd way, I think there's a possibility Wonder Woman may benefit from this move. It's hard to say that. It seems counterintuitive to say that. I acknowledge that it does, but I mean, it may very well benefit. I think it's going to do well. I think it's do well. I'm excited for it. Listen, Patty Jenkins, she's a queen, man. She's an absolute queen. What as a director, what she's been able to do in her films is like crazy. Whether you're going back to Monster, what she was able to pull off in the first Wonder Woman, I just trust this lady, man. I trust her a lot. So let's see what happens. All right. Evan Ryan writes, hi, John. Happy Saturday, and happy Saturday to you as well. What would you like to see Tarantino do next? Thanks. You know, we've talked about this before. Tarantino keeps saying like, oh, he's got like one more movie left. I don't buy that. I think Tarantino's going to be making movies for another 15 years. That aside, I've said this before. I will say it again. As much as I love Tarantino films, all Tarantino films have a very, very similar DNA to them, right? And I love them. Don't get me wrong. But when you sit down and watch a Tarantino film, you know instantly you're watching a Tarantino film. I would love... Look, Tarantino can do anything next. Like, other than Hateful Eight, which I was not all that big on. And I wasn't big on Death Proof. I admit that. I didn't like Death Proof. Aside from that, I love his films. Particularly Inglourious Bastards, Django. I can't decide whether Django and Inglourious Bastards is my favorite film of his. Of course, Pulp Fiction, stuff like that. But the one thing that you could say about Quentin's films is that you could sit down and watch 3 minutes of it. Even if you didn't know this is a Quentin Tarantino film, you would know. You would be able to tell this is a Quentin Tarantino film. I would love to see him step outside of his regular sandbox and do something really different. And that's part of the reason why I actually got excited when it looked like maybe he might do a Star Trek movie. Part of the reason I got so excited about that was just because I would love to see Tarantino do something so radically different from what he normally does, just to see what he does with it. Maybe a rom-com. Don't laugh. Maybe a rom-com. Have Quentin Tarantino do a PG-13 rom-com. And let's see, I would love to see what a director with his skill could do in a PG-13 rom-com. I just want to see what he could do. You know, so look, I'll take anything that Quentin Tarantino gives us. But if I had my choice, I would love to see him step way outside of his comfort zone and do something like totally radically different. I just think it'd be cool to see. All right. Condor Man writes, with the Snyder Cut coming, do you think the Legion of Doom will appear in the cut? If it's successful, will we see the Legion of Doom in the DCU, maybe the HBO Max? I don't think that was ever a part. No. Listen, you got to remember, Zack Snyder is not about to make a new movie. Zack Snyder is taking the movie he already shot and now just doing the post-production on it. Now they're doing the post-production. They're going to put in the CGI. They're going to take out all the wire work. They're going to do all the color correction. They're going to do all the sound. They're going to do, they might record some additional voiceover stuff, all that kind of stuff, but they're not making a new movie. The whole point of the Snyder Cut was to put out what his original vision was, and the Legion of Doom was not a part of that Justice League movie. And so because it wasn't a part, I don't think Zack Snyder's going back now and recreating what he shot. No, he's taking what he shot and the movie he already filmed and did the initial production on. Now they're going to do all the post-production on. So because of that, I don't expect, I mean, never say never, but I don't expect we're going to see Legion of Doom. I think we're going to see what Zack Snyder originally envisioned for that Justice League movie, and we'll see where they go from there. So no, I don't think Legion of Doom is going to be part of that. All right. Casinema Reviews writes, this might sound odd, but are most people under the impression that all 3 films of the original Star Wars trilogy were directed by George Lucas? Yes, they are. Most people are under the impression that George Lucas directed all 3. I rarely, if ever, see people talk about Irvin Kershner and Richard Marquand in regards to Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. No, it's true. Now, a part of that reason was, though, is because when you go back and even watch documentary material based on those things, is George Lucas was still very much in control of both of those films. George Lucas, it was his story and it was going to be done his way and all that kind of stuff. And same thing with Return of the Jedi. But yeah, you're right. I think generally speaking, people are under the impression that George Lucas directed all 3 of the first Star Wars films when he didn't. He directed the first one and he had other people directing the other 2. But part of the reason for that impression, and part of the reason why maybe that impression isn't all that wrong, is because he was still very much in control of those films, right? So, but no, it's a good thing to bring up Casinema, because I think many people forget that. And I think that's a really good thing to point out. All right, next up, Evan Ryan writes, hey, John, UFC 250 tonight. I'm very looking for that Cody Garbrandt fight. Cody Garbrandt went 11-0, then lost 3 fights in a row. 2 to TJ Dillashaw in title fights. That first TJ Dillashaw, he came this close to knocking Dillashaw out. If there had been a little bit more time that round, he might have finished off TJ Dillashaw. But he's lost now 3 in a row. And he hasn't fought in over a year. So then of course the Amanda Nunes taking on a good Canadian kid tonight. It's a good card, man. I'm very, very excited about it. Anyway, the fight I'm looking forward to the most is Sterling versus Sandhagen. What about you? I gotta say, even though I should be more excited about the title fight, the Amanda Nunes versus the good Canadian kid, I should be, but it's that Cody Garbrandt fight, man. I'm very, very curious. You got 2 dangerous dudes in there, both on bits of losing streaks, and both of them desperately need a win, and that's the one that's got my attention right now. That's the one that's got my attention, so we'll see. I'm very excited about the card tonight, though. All right, James L.H. writes, hey, John, love Hackman as Popeye Doyle in French Connection, but another role I love is him going up against Denzel Washington in Crimson Tides. Love that movie, the submarine movie, for those of you who are not familiar with. Great film, also with James Gandolfini and Viggo Mortensen. It is a wonderful film. Actually, it's funny because I remember not long ago, we were talking not about Gene Hackman, but a conversation about Denzel Washington was up, right? And basically the question was asked is, what's the movie of Denzel's that most people forget about? And Crimson Tide came up. And so that's a really good one, because it's not only kind of overlooked from a Hackman point of view, it's also kind of overlooked from a Denzel point of view. It's a really good movie. I mean, look, it's not Clear and Present Danger to me, but it's a really, really good little movie, and just another one of the long, impressive films on the resume of one Gene Hackman. I just love, very good. Well done. Well done pointing that one out, James. All right, James LH also writes, John, I agree. Unforgiven, my favorite Western. But for years before that, it was two Sergio Leone Westerns, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Once Upon a Time in the West. Excellent choices. Henry Fonda was scary, especially compared to his previous films. And that's why I always bring that up, right, James? It's like, it feels weird. Even though Unforgiven, isn't Unforgiven just about 30 years old now? Hold on a second here. Yeah, 92. In 2 years, it's going to be 30 years old. But because it was 92, I always acknowledge it feels weird to say when the question comes up of what is the best Western, to say something that wasn't from that like Sergio Leone era, right? That wasn't from the spaghetti Western era. It feels odd to say something that was in the 90s. It does feel weird to say that. Because, I mean, Clint, oh my God, he is a walking hall of fame of the Western genre and more. By the way, talking about movies like Gene Hackman and Denzel films that people overlook and don't talk about, Clint Eastwood's got this movie that did not get received well by audiences or critics that I really liked called Firefox. It's about him being an American spy stealing a Russian jet. I loved that movie, even though nobody else does. But if you ever get a chance to check it out, check that one out. Anyway, that aside, Clint is a walking hall of fame of the Western genre. And you would think if you're talking about what is the greatest Western of all time, you would go to one of those movies, if not one of those movies specifically, then at least to that era. And I keep landing back on Unforgiven. But listen, James, those ones you mentioned, totally prime and of the greatest of all time of the genre. Absolutely 100%. All right. Joshua Stevens writes, my top 3 scenes in Endgame: Avengers Assemble. Yep. Cap wielding Mjolnir. Yep. Tony and Pepper, back to back, blasting in their suits. Listen, I said this the other day, or maybe a few weeks ago. I don't know why that moment gave me such chills. I honestly, I don't know. That moment that Pepper shows up with them in her suit and her and Tony flying into the air back to back, blasting everything. I'm getting goosebumps. The hair on my arm is standing up. Also, at least if we can get my arm in focus here. There it is. Look at the hair on my arm. It's standing up. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this. Anyway. Yeah, man. That scene is great. I love that moment. And I like the A-Force moment. Look, there's tons and tons and tons of moments. Obviously, the top two are Avengers Assemble. Obviously, the Mjolnir flying into Cap's hand is the number one for me. Obviously, just straight up on your left is also a big one for a lot of people. That's a big one too. But I think that one with Tony and Pepper back to back, sailing through the air. Oh, I get chills just thinking about it now. That's got to be up there, and it's not appreciated enough, and I agree with you on that. All right, Tracy E. writes, hey, John. As a black woman, I appreciate your efforts to support black movies and the movement for equality. Don't let clout chasers get you down. Oh, I appreciate that. No, listen. Jay Washington's comments. When Jay Washington first tried his sneak up from behind hatchet job on me 2 years ago, I was amazed and overwhelmed and very, very touched by the way that before I even said the first thing about, Jay, I think you need to watch the video before saying, because I don't think you'd be saying this if you went and watched my video. I don't need to watch your video. But I think one of my favorite moments ever in my career that I was really, truly touched was seeing the way my audience, who knows my content, immediately rallied around me. I was very, very moved by that. I was very appreciative and grateful for that. I don't get me wrong. I didn't enjoy seeing another person, even if it was Jay Washington. I didn't enjoy seeing another person getting a lot of backlash online, but it was at the same time, it was very moving for me to see people wanted to come to my defense because they know my content. They watch my show. They have seen what I've said. So I mean, I honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't know what wire isn't connected in Jay Washington's brain. I don't know what it is. I don't know what makes him think that he can come out, blast me for something, acknowledge he was wrong and apologize for it, and then 2 years later double down on it and go back to it again. I just don't know what his malfunction is. What's your malfunction? I mean, I don't know what his malfunction is. I really don't. But I just want to make it very clear because of the way some people have written to me. Because the person who wrote it in the super chat, I believe me, I got emails about it too. And I have to make this clear. I've got to make this clear. Because a lot of people were associating RB3 with this because he happened to be on the show as Jay Washington was going off. Let me be very, 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 very clear. This had nothing to do with RB3. Raw RB3 had nothing to do with this. He didn't say it. He didn't do anything. None of this is RB3's fault. So let's be very, very clear about that, please. You know, Rob and RB3 have enough that they're both trying to work out. And believe me, they're trying to work it out. They really are. I'm proud of both of those guys. But it had nothing to do with RB3. So please, people, stop associating RB3 with what Jay Washington did, because it had nothing to do with him. Just to be very clear. Anyway, Tracy, I appreciate your sentiments and your comments. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Trey Davies writes, "Hey, John, what are your thoughts on John Bernthal?" I like John Bernthal, man. I've always wondered why he never gets lead roles in movies. In my opinion, Emmy-worthy performance as Punisher showed that he can handle a lead role, but he's often given roles as side characters in movies. Okay, but first of all, you got to understand this. John Bernthal is having a career that 99% of actors in Hollywood would kill to have, right? I mean, he's popping up. He's got a great role in Ford v Ferrari. I loved him in Ford v Ferrari. He had a great role in Wind River, even though it was small, but he was very good in Wind River. He gets to appear in some really high profile films and some high profile stuff. And he just constantly does. And by the way, damn it, it's a movie that doesn't get enough love. The Accountant, Ben Affleck's The Accountant, with him and John Bernthal. I thought their chemistry together, I thought was great. And I so desperately want them to do another. Now there's talk about doing The Accountant, a TV show. I don't give a crap about a TV show for that. I want to see Ben Affleck and John Bernthal back. That's what I want to see. So yeah, and he was terrific in Punisher. He was, I don't know that I would say Emmy worthy. I don't know that I would personally go that far, but he was great in it. I like John Bernthal very, very much. And I get excited about seeing him in just about anything he's in. But listen, just because I think a lot of Hollywood just looks at him saying he is an excellent guy for the most part as that secondary or third level character that really elevates a movie from that position. And maybe they don't look at him as a leading man. Okay. If they don't, that's fine. I got no complaints. I just love that I get to see him pop up in high profile movie after high profile movie. And every time he does, he just crushes it. So if he keeps doing those, I'm happy. If he does get a break for a lead, I'm happy. But remember, like, these casting people are always looking for people who fit the role they're trying to do. Maybe to them, the things that makes John Bernthal fit all these other roles makes it so he doesn't really fit their lead role. If that's the case, fine. I just want to see the guy keep getting work. And I want to keep enjoying him on screen. And as long as they do that, then I'm perfectly happy. I'm perfectly happy. All right. Next up here, Cinema Reviews writes, 1 of 3. A few years ago, my family and I went on a cruise. That's cool. Went on a cruise. And one of the stops was in Philipsburg, Saint Martin. While there, I saw a sign that said, "Meet that Yoda guy." Nick Malley, one of the designers of Yoda, has a little museum there with exhibits for a bunch of the movies he has worked on. He was even working on a Yoda head sculpt when I walked in. One of the first sections of the tour was on one of your favorite movies, The Highlander. Oh yeah, I love The Highlander. When talking about making the head sculpt of the actress, he said, Of course, we couldn't actually cut off Sean Connery's head, even if there were times when we really wanted to. I've been meaning to send this story for a while, but I kept forgetting. Thought you'd find it interesting and funny since you love Highlander so much. Yeah, first, that sounds awesome. And yeah, I've heard in the latter years that Sean Connery may have been a little difficult to work with. I may have heard stories like that from a couple of different projects. Yes. But we let it slide because he's Sean Connery and he's royalty. And we love seeing him. And I loved him in that first Highlander movie as Ramirez. How he played Sean Connery playing a Spaniard is kind of weird. But anyway, they call him the Spaniard, Ramirez. But he's great in it. And I do love that story, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is, we couldn't actually cut off Sean Connery's head, even though we wanted to. That's awesome. And that sounds like the type of little treasure you find, like this place. That would have been awesome. I would love to see something like that. That is so cool. Thank you for sharing that story, man. It put a smile on my face. I appreciate that. All right, DJ Riley writes, I wrote in a while ago saying that that Like Mike was one of my guilty pleasure movies. I think that the concept of the first movie is interesting, maybe with an adult playing the key role of the person who gets the shoes and finally the ability to play in the NBA. Yeah, listen, I got to admit, Like Mike was never one for me. That was never one for me. But, like, with the release of that ESPN documentary, The Last Dance, I mean, if you want to do anything Michael Jordan related, dare I say, even a follow-up or a reboot of a Like Mike, DJ, is there ever a better time than to do it now? Would there ever be a better time than now to jump on that right now, if they wanted to do such a thing? By the way, if you guys have not seen that Last Dance documentary on ESPN, you don't even have to be a basketball fan. You don't even have to be a sports fan. It's riveting. It's so well done, and I highly, highly, highly recommend you you go check that out. But I think you and I would agree on that, DJ. Now is the best time ever if they wanted to do something like that. All right, Philly G writes, thanks for your show and getting me hooked on Zevia. Sponsor Campea, damn it. That's right. You know what? Maybe if I, instead of using my... by the way, some people think this is like the same cup I use every day. No, I've got like 12 of these cups. Ann and I just use them just to pull out of whatever. I use this cup instead of others because my regular glasses, if you try to pour in the whole can of soda, it goes almost right to the rim, which means I can't put in an ice cube. So I have to get like a picnic size glass to do it. But maybe if I started bringing the can of Zevia, maybe Zevia would then sponsor me. Got to admit, Zevia does send me some free cases of their soda because I talk about their soda so much. So they've sent me a few free cases. Thank you, guys. I do appreciate it. But Zevia Cola, sponsor me, you sons of bitches. Thank you for that. Philly G buys your soda because of me, damn it. Sponsor the John Campea Show. All right, Arturo writes, hey, John, I'm on my way to Burbank, but I want to make my date. But I want to take my date to a nice steak restaurant. In your opinion, which is the best steak restaurant for a nice dinner date that is different and semi-original? Thanks. Ooh, in Burbank? Huh. I'm actually a big fan of, there's a chain that I really like called Ruth's Chris. Ruth's Chris, which I really very, very much enjoy. A good steakhouse in, look, honestly, the only steakhouse, and I'm freezing, a Wood Ranch. It's not like a traditional big steakhouse, but Wood Ranch is really good. Again, I'm trying to think of specifically in Burbank, but Ann and I both really do enjoy Wood Ranch. So if you get out here, try that. But most of the good steakhouses that Ann and I will go to, and I'm not normally a huge steak guy, but every once in a while Ann and I we normally need to go outside of Burbank for that. But the one that when I'm in the mood for a steak and I want to try some, Wood Ranch is one that we usually go to. So you might want to check that one out. But I am no food critic, so be careful taking my recommendation. All right, John McKinney writes, who would win in a fight? Lex Luthor in battle armor suit or Norman Osborn in Green Goblet suit? Again, whenever somebody asks these questions about who would win, X character from one comic book title or X character from another comic book company, the answer is always the same. It depends who's writing it. If a DC person is writing it, Lex Luthor kicks Norman Osborn's ass. If a Marvel dude is writing it, Norman Osborn will kick Lex Luthor's ass. It all depends. And listen, we live in a world where if you can have Batman, a regular human, not so regular, but a non-superpowered human being, beat Superman the God-Man, well, if that can happen in a comic book, then anything can happen. So what it will ultimately come down to is who's writing the comic. So I'll say this. If I was writing the comic, I would have Lex Luthor win that fight. Because remember, Lex Luthor creates his stuff to battle Superman. So if I was writing it, 8 times out of 10, Lex Luthor wins the fight. But again, it all comes down to who writes the damn thing. It all comes down to who writes it. All right, James Welsh writes, another great movie that I love is fitting for our current time is the Heat of the Night. Absolutely. Is Heat of the Night. Man, you're just like the rest of us, ain't you? That was a powerful scene and I always mention his name at his best. I would love to see a modern adaptation. I think there was a modern adaptation. Hold a second. And Carol O'Connor, by the way, Archie Bunker himself, so freaking good. So freaking good in that movie. I'm trying to figure out remember who directed it. James Lee Barrett directed that one. That's right. Heat of the Night is actually kind of the spiritual grandfather of movies like actually, I'm looking at the TV series. Hold on a second. I was like, wait a minute, that's not who directed that. Hold on a second. I actually brought up the TV series. I was about to say, Heat of the Night is the spiritual grandfather, and then I looked at the year and said 1985. That didn't come out in 95. It came out in the 60s, right? Norman Jewison. That's why it didn't sit well with me. Norman Jewison. So Sidney Poitier, Warren Oates, Lee Grant, Gates, others. It is the spiritual grandfather of other like law enforcement, civil rights kind of movies, like A Mississippi Burning, like other films of that ilk that came out later. A lot of them can find their roots in a movie like Heat of the Night, which was just incredible. By the way, speaking of Sidney Poitier, in a movie that's also talking about, that's a good applicable movie for the discussions we're having today. Sidney Poitier was in another one that was so far ahead of its time. It was called Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, right? It was done in 1967, the same year as Heat of the Night. But it was, of course, done from a comedy point of view, but of course, again, raising really important issues. That one, of course, was directed by Stanley Kramer and starred Spencer Tracy, Sidney Poitier, and Katharine Hepburn. And it was done in 1967. That movie was so far ahead of its time. For those of you who don't know what Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is about, you got Hepburn, who is coming home to her parents, and she's bringing the man she's in love with. And it's in 1967, and she shows up with a black man, with Sidney Poitier. And hijinks ensue, but it's poignant. It's done within the shell of a comedy. But I'm telling you, man, that movie, when you really understand, because it was before I was even born, but when you understand, when you look back at history and you understand the times, that movie was so far ahead of its time. So yeah, Sidney Poitier, those are just a couple of the movies, like Night, Dinner, a couple of other ones. Those are the reasons why the same year that Halle Berry won her Academy Award for Monsters Ball, I believe was the same year that Sidney Poitier was given the honorary Academy Award that year. And I think Denzel won that year for Training Day. If I could be mistaken, but I think that's the same year. I think the year that Halle Berry won for Monsters Ball, Denzel Washington won for, I believe it was for Training Day, and Sidney Poitier was given the honorary Oscar. I think that was all done in the same year, if I'm not mistaken, which was poetic that it turned out that way. But that's why a guy like the career of Sidney Poitier, why he always gets discussed and stuff like that. And then, of course, Carol O'Connor, who was, of course, Archie Bunker. They then did a television series, not as good, still poignant, that came in the 80s, though. That came in the 1980s, but there you go. All right. Let's move on here. Where do we go? I got lost here. There we are. Okay, Simon writes, I want to thank you for checking out Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. I appreciate your opinion and review. I am not a toxic person that thinks everyone should agree with my opinion. I totally respect the points that you made, and they were valid. So listen, you weren't alone, Simon. A lot of people have been asking me to check out Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. Now, for those of you who don't know, I generally am not a fan of either Marvel or DC made straight for home video animated stuff. I generally do not like anything from Marvel or DC in that vein. There are some exceptions. Had a bunch of people ask me to check out Justice League Dark. I watched it. I wasn't a fan. I didn't hate it, though. I will say I did not hate it. It had some pretty cool things in it. Overall, I didn't think it was very good. But I did check it out because enough of you guys told me to do so, and I did. And that's how much your opinion means to me. But anyway, thanks for following up, Simon. I appreciate the kind words. All right. Guys, I only got about 3 or 4 minutes left here, and then I'm going to have to call it a day. Jaron Morris writes, John, forget the ending. In your opinion, about Last of Us, when did Joel embrace Ellie as his daughter? And it was not just about delivering her to the Fireflies, but it was now, this is my daughter, my family, and I will protect her. For me, it was the giraffe scene, and right before the leave, Joel stops her and says, we don't have to do this. We can go back to Tommy's, live our life. And Ellie wanted to keep going, and Joel replied firmly, I am damn sure not leaving without you. I mean, that is a great moment. I remember that part. You know, a lot of people have been asking me about the original Last of Us. You know, people are, what's the most moving moment? We talked about that. What do we think about the decision that Joel had to make at the end and all that kind of stuff? But it's been a beat since I saw the story. I don't know if I could tell you off the top of my head. Like, when you spell it out, I remember that scene, but I don't remember the scene for me that it was like, this is the moment that it got real. This is the moment that you could firmly see the bonds between the two characters were there. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's a damn good one. And by the way, I'm hearing whispers, despite all the complaints about the initial leaks, I'm hearing this game is as good, if not better, than the first one, the new one that's coming out. The review embargo lifts in a few days. It's going to be interesting to see, Jaron. Anyway, thanks for writing that in, man. All right. Last 2 questions of the day, guys. Then I gotta call it a day. If for no other reason that we're well over 2 hours now, my throat's starting to go. You know what's funny? When the Snyder Cut comes out and people see Darkseid, most of them will accuse WB of ripping off Marvel and Thanos, even though the opposite is true. I don't think that is true at all. I don't think the opposite is true either. I think neither of them were ripping off each other, especially in the movie sense. So I kind of discard anybody who comes to me who tries to start a discussion. Marvel ripped this off. DC ripped this off. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, guys, can you give it a rest? Haven't we moved past this whole Marvel versus DC thing? Have we not? I feel like we've moved past it. I think everybody just agrees now. For the most part, not everyone, but for the most part, I think most of us now agree, we just want good comic book movies. We don't care if it comes from the DC label or the Marvel label. We just want good comic book movies. And I feel like we've moved past, not everybody, but I feel like for the most part, we've moved past a lot of that trash. I think we have. So I'm hoping, I don't think we're going to hear as big of that as maybe we would have 3 or 4 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I feel that way. All right. Jaron Morris writes, and the winter playthrough when you play as Ellie. Oh, we're going back to Last of Us. There's a strong argument to be made that that's the moment where Ellie embraced Joel as a father because shit went through to take care of him was amazing and beautiful. I do remember that. And yes, that was a huge thing when he needed her to survive, like his wounds and all that kind of stuff. I remember that. That was a really good part. But I would almost think that moment, again, I don't remember it well, but I feel like, if I'm remembering correctly, I always felt like Elle found her attachment to Joel a little bit sooner than Joel found his attachment to her. And I think it might have actually come before that, even though that scene was the real expression of it, and we as the audience really saw it clearly. But it was a beautiful part of it. It was. I'm very excited to see what people think of this new one. All right, guys, last question of the day. Hey, John. HBO Max has all of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. I didn't know that on it. I had heard that there was a possibility of a TV show could be created for that platform. I would love to see a Nightmare on Elm Street HBO Max series that isn't an anthology. What are your thoughts on this? I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't think I have any interest in a Nightmare on Elm Street series. I mean, the whole concept of Nightmare on Elm Street is so very limited. And Nightmare on Elm Street is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I don't know if it works as a series. I would be more intrigued on like an HBO Max original movie for HBO Max. That's just a reboot of it, even though they tried that a few years ago with Haley. What's the actor's name? The guy who played Rorschach in Joel. He had 3 names. I'm forgetting it now. Anyway, yeah, and that one didn't work so well. But I would honestly be more interested in a reboot standalone special on HBO Max rather than a series. I just don't know that it lends itself to being a series. I think it's more lent to being a standalone film, but that's just me. Anyway, guys, that will do it for today's installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much for being here, guys, and making this show a part of your weekend. Thank you to all of you guys who sent in questions, not just because you gave us great fun things to talk about, but also because you supported the channel while you were doing it. And all of us here on the John Campea YouTube channel, thank you guys very, very much for that. Guys, I hope you have a tremendous weekend ahead of yourselves. Stay safe, be smart, take care of yourselves, take care of the people around you. Go do some good things for yourself, good things for the people around you. Go do some good stuff, guys. Have a relaxing, enjoyable weekend. And don't forget, the John Campea Show will return on Monday. Make sure you guys are back to join us for that then. That will do it for me for now, guys. My name is John Campea. Thanks so much for being here. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.